Yes, welcome, welcome. So today will be a short one. I so if you are on Instagram, and of course I watch you guys all off social media, but but the reality, I when we talk about social media too, like I understand that you guys can't necessarily give it up. So of course I love the brick device, and the other day I bricked. Oh my god, for almost a day and a half, it was like heaven. But, you can also pare down your algorithm. You can change your algorithm, okay? And you can follow good news things, right? I try to follow like really good news, so start seeing good things. And you can follow not people, maybe curb your like experts, because I think that gets really confusing for a lot of parents is having so many voices in their head. But one mom I think you should follow her account is called Real Mom Stuff, and it's REEL, like Instagram Reels, and she's hilarious. She is so funny. She really makes light of parenting, and it's it's fun because in that, like, chop wood, carry water episode that I just did, I think it's just really she exemplifies it. She just finds ways to make motherhood as ridiculous as motherhood is, and she, like, leans into it, but she just did a reel, and it reminded me of a concept that I've talked about before. It's in Oh Crap, I Have a Toddler. Her son her son is, like, super dramatic, and so he's lying on the floor, and he goes, "I'm in critical condition," and so she goes and she gets her younger child, and she's like, "Quick, we have to help him," and she acts like an EMT, and they put headphones on him, and she pretends to pump his chest, and they drag him, from the scene, and she said, "This is how I deal with my kid being dramatic or extra is I go overboard with them, then I bring them back to reality." And this is what I love. So I call this leaning in, right? And that's what I've talked about before, but I think her like visual of it is so perfect. When your kid is being extra, go extra with them. This is part of making life magical, right? And bring meaning to the mundane. I say this in Oh Crap, I Have a Toddler, which is if your child is hurt, right? This is one of the big ones. And this goes into that whole notion too of what you resist persists. So if your kid's being extra, whatever, and you resist it, it's going to persist. You are not going to get rid of their extraness, right? You have to lean into it. And maybe it's frustration, maybe it's when they're angry, maybe it's when they're hurt. So the example I use in Oh Crap, I Have a Toddler is I've seen this time and time again. A kid falls down and gets hurt. Now, number one, typically, if we don't even make any judgment about it, they are fine. They look to us for the reaction. So, say they're riding a little balance bike and they fall down, they look right to you to borrow your nervous system. What do I think about this? They don't know what to think. It felt scary, but is it? So they're going to look to us. How we react is going to determine if we're like, "Hey, that was a nice fall. You recovered well." They're gonna get up and be fine, right? N A lot of the time, not always. It depends if they were really hurt. Now, if you go, "Oh my god, are you okay?" Yeah, they're gonna freak out because 'cause they're borrowing your nervous system, right? There are a couple of things I'm just gonna keep pounding away at. Borrowing your nervous system is one. But let's say they do actually get hurt. Say they get a little scrape. So one day there was a little girl at the park, and where I used to live, there was a mixed socioeconomic bracket, and there were often kids there without parental supervision, even smaller kids. And so this little one fell, and she had an abrasion, so it wasn't like a big deal, but she was crying, and I couldn't find a parent immediately, so I just said, "Come here, come here," and she was crying and crying, and I ran. This was like there was a baseball game going on, so maybe the parent was somewhere off, and it was a busy day. I used to run the snack shack, so I had Band-Aids, so I went and got a Band-Aid, and I was like, "Oh my god. Oh my god, that must hurt so much." I can't even believe it. There's blood. Oh no. And now, mind you, she was already falling apart. I did not contribute to her falling apart. I was validating her falling apart. She immediately stopped crying and she was like, "It's not that much blood." And I was like, "No, but I have a Band-Aid. Let's wash it off. Come on, we'll wash it off." The girl recovered in record time. And then I knew this from Pascal because Pascal, particularly, he was so funny with abrasions. Pascal has never gotten seriously hurt, but when he was a kid, he was so freaking dramatic. He got an abrasion, and you know how the skin, like, it looks like blood, but it's just like tiny little bubbles, it's not dripping or anything like that. God, to hear him tell my mother, he was like, "Meme, you can't believe it. I fell and my knee opened up and blood was gushing out." I was like, "Pascal, that's so not true." But I learned with him because he was so dramatic like that, that if you lean in to whatever it is that the kid's freaking out about, it goes away faster, but sometimes you have to go into that world to get them back. And this is true across the board. When I was in social work, I used to work with schizophrenic people. I found schizophrenics absolutely amazing. Like, I am convinced that in other cultures or in another time in history that schizophrenia is really shaman. Like the stories and the visuals that some of my clients had. And so I would always go into their world to try to bring them back, right? To ground them in some reality. And so I do think when our kids are in these altered states of anger, frustration, like it comes up on them so fast that it grips their brain and their body. And so if we are just using adult logic and being like, "Oh, it's not that important." Ooh, isn't that's the suckiest thing to say ever. It's not that important. It is to them. They're freaking out, right? So if we lean into it, we get better responses. We lean into the Now, does this mean when they're having a tantrum, you have a tantrum? No, tantrums are different. Like tantrums, once you get past a certain point with a tantrum, you just have to let it run its course. If you start acting like you're having a tantrum or you try to combat that with words or action, typically you get a fire, adding fuel to the fire reaction. So with a tantrum, you actually just want to kind of stay very calm, do whatever it takes to keep yourself regulated, just sit, breathe, um, maybe do a gentle shaking out, look at the horizon, widen your gaze so you stay regulated. Because again, they're going to be borrowing your nervous system. That's co-regulation. So this lean in isn't for like a full blown tantrum. It's more for when, they get hurt or they're just being super dramatic or just super extra. And, my mom was really good at she wasn't good at, like, if I was feeling extra, she was not. I was always, I was told I was too sensitive, I was always told to get over it, like, I was really put down, like that, um, which b I am super sensitive. I love that now we know that's like a superpower. It's not it's also when people call you too sensitive, it's usually a way to, explain away their bad behavior. Um but my mom knew I was extra with, like, how I wanted to dress, how I wanted to like, how I presented to the world. I was very extra, and I have a classic story. I've always loved all the colors all at the same time. I've given my druthers, I will dress like a kindergartner with no sense of style whatsoever. I like colors. And so I've learned to dress like an adult, but I'm going back. I'm going back on that. I'm like, dressing like an adult sucks. I'm going back to dressing like a kindergartner. So, um, one day my mom sewed all our clothes and she was making my sister an A-line skirt with panels. So there were about 8 panels that you stitch together and it made like an A. So it was a little wide at the bottom and narrow at the top so you could like twirl with it. And so I was like, "Oh, mommy, I want to make a skirt, but I want all these. I want different panels." And she and she was like, "Jamie, I can't. You'll look like she said something probably like a gypsy or a hobo or something old school like that." And I was like, "No." And she made it for me and I wore it like every day. And to this day, whenever, when I moved Pascal back to Rhode Island from San Francisco, I had nothing, of course, in my house and I moved with very minimal stuff cross country. And M I got curtains, and I got different color curtains for every window because, like, I like that, and my mother was like, "Oh my god, I can't believe, like, you have different colored curtains for every room." So my mother would lean into that aspect of me and my extraness there, so that was always fun. But yeah, lean into whatever your kid's giving you, you know? If it's if it's, we don't wanna counteract it. I wanna be clear. We don't wanna it's not tit for tat. So, like, if your kid's giving you attitude, you don't wanna give them attitude back. That's not modeling, right? But you could model like, "Hey, there's a little attitude today. Are you hungry? Are you tired?" Right? Like, we could be extra on what the solutions are. And I find this brings humor, but I also find that it makes our lives more joyful, and that's just what I'm gonna be harping on from here on out because I feel like we're always trying to put something into, like, a box of perfection so we can close it and it's all set, but our kids are just messy, and I want you to not resist these things because they will persist, and so how can we do these workarounds, right? And a lot of times it's really really worrying less about the child and more about like, worrying about less, like, you're gonna say the perfect thing or what expert says whatever. I've mentioned this before. A lot of people, when I work with clients, they're frozen because they've heard from so many experts, and they're like, "I don't know. Should I do this? Should I do this? Should I do this?" And they're in functional freeze. And I think it's better to be like, how can I joke my way out of this? How can I lighten the moment? How can I, um try to turn this around into a joyful experience. And of course, it's not always possible. But if we can get out of that functional freeze, because I really feel like that's where most moms are operating in their nervous systems in functional freeze. If we can get out of that, I think it just brings more texture to our lives. And I think it will create you as an ally for your kid. And I think sometimes what happens is when we have kids with high needs, drama, deeply feeling kids, highly sensitive kids, it becomes a somewhat of a chore to us. It becomes an albatross, and I don't think it has to be. I think it can be lightened up if we figure out how to work with that kid, and it helps our relationship with our kid overall because, again, you become somebody not stonewalling them, but you become somebody who's in it with them, even if it's going completely overboard. And, this mom, I don't even know her real name, I should check it out, but this Real Mom stuff, she also has a whole bit about, changing your name. Changing your name because 'cause you've heard mom too many times, and I've talked about that before, like, I would have days where I would just have Pascal call me Jamie because I could not handle the word mom, just, like, made me so reactive, and so I was like on the days he called me Jamie, I swear to God, just that simple shift helped everything. I was like, "Okay, you can go back to calling me mom." And we would he got to know it as he got older, he was like, "I think" he could tell when I was on edge, and he'd be like, "Hey, Jamie." And so I think it's great when we, like, arm our kids with these tools, right? So that we're existing with them. And remember, guys, the goal is not a perfect nervous system. The goal is not calm all the time. The goal is living life in color with all your emotions and repairing when necessary. Obviously, if all you do is yell at your kids, if all you are is overwhelmed, yeah, we need help. Yeah, you need to get some help. But in general, we're all going to just be messy across the board, and that's okay. But when we sink into, again, that has meaning. That is mundane. Having feelings is mundane. We don't have to fix them. We just have to be in relationship with them, and then things change and shift. So, all right, that's it for today. As always, put down your phone and rock on. Have a gorgeous day. Thank you for being here. I love you guys. Bye.